Well, AMD family, we have another mid-patch notes to come about. Part 2 so far, which is very interesting because the very first one we had with the initial rebuild of what they did where they circumvented Windows was pretty bad, actually. Did not show promising compatibilities with in situationally going down to what was inside of NVIDIA's, but it showed very light reductions inside of AMD's. But this new circumvent of what they did inside of Windows actually works really well in tandem. So what we're going to be doing is breaking down the very beginning scores of what we had from the post to pre and those contrasts, moving throughout the various segments that we've gone into for the testing. My name is Mac. You're at the MacGyver 7 channel. For all you returning AMD fans in my community, cheers. How you doing? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear how everyone's doing in the staycation. Besides just tech-related news. I appreciate all you guys and gals. But let's go ahead and dive into some benchmarks. So that's what this is. It's just fun benchmarks comparing. This isn't a lot of news. Although I'm really hoping for a new patch. I feel like there could probably be a lot of hammered out stuff AMD can do. But let's go ahead and jump into what today is going to start with DirectX 12 and Time Spy. So let's go back to the very beginning. Before the brand new update, which we have right now, which is the 20.4.1. We haven't been introduced to a 20.4.2, which I'm assuming they might even go into a .3, if not go into the .5, which is the next month if we be phasing into of going into what's going on. But who knows? AMD right now is cooking up something, but right now what I'm cooking up is the pre-post situation. Like, so right now we're in the very beginning. This is the old school, like before the situation of the 20.4.1. So the prior pouch, that's what this is. Looking at that score, it's not too bad. Now when you look at the situation that goes right now, which is the current Windows update, all the security drivers updated, the 20.4.1, so you can see that there's actually an improvement over like the original one. But check this out. When you look at the original drivers that Windows had prior to that, you can see, whoa, holy crap, there's actually a little bit more to gain over the pre, now being the post at that portion in time, which is almost, give or take, about, I want to say about a month ago, give or take, almost a little bit under that, give or take, that we saw that this patch came in. And I mean, that was pretty good improvement, right? But then when you look down the line, so to clarify, this is the 20.3.1. This is before and afters, because I wanted to show directly what we've already gone through. So we've seen improvements. When the old driver was, Windows was kind of jiving into situations. You can see the flow, pre-post. Then you look at the very current, which I'm sitting there in the very future, which is now for me, when we're looking at some improvements over that, but we see reductions for as far as when we enter in the 20.4.1, but when we update our Windows, then we see an improvement after the update comes back into place. Because when you compare these two, right, the same old school driver, the 20.3.1, you see the Windows like reduction. Then you see the AMD trying with their patch, and they successfully are able to improve the scores. Now you go into my pre and post scores of the mid patch notes that I just finished up, and look at that. We see where it's reducing a little bit, but then when I ran the scores right before I installed the current Windows, at the very moment where I got this score, where everything came into it, where it circumvented and it came into very beauty, this was the security driver. The security driver affected from this to this. So look at that. Same driver from the very beginning of when it kind of launched. As you can see right here, we have an issue where it's like, okay, well, our 20.3.1 ain't working no more, but bam, okay, our 20.4.1 is pretty chill. Then Windows, then finally Windows. So you can kind of see how this is affecting your FPS. I mean, for DirectX 12, it's kind of a bad performance portion, especially if you're trying to get some like FPS in on the staycation, guys and gals. So AMD is not always to blame in these situations where frayed portions. Also, between these driver updates with Windows, I've noticed an increase and decreasement with my flickering on the screen. So I'm really hoping that they'll drop a brand new driver for AMD to kind of combat what Windows is kind of doing and level the playing field. But let's go ahead and briefly do the same thing we just broke down with the 20.3.1 versus the 20 20.4.1 pre and post for as far as the extremes. But starting from the very beginning, let's take control of this with information and benchmarks. So you can kind of see where yesterday's driver with yesterday's window wasn't that bad of a performer, but today's Windows with today's patch, which is the 20.4.1, you can see that there actually is performance when everything works in tandem. But how did we get there and what happened in between? That's what we want to look at. As you can see before, as we started from the beginning, and we're right over here for as far as what ends up happening with the very beginning with the 20.3.1, then we have the installation of that, and yeah, there's probably a reduction. Not that kind of a little bit of a bummer for as far as that. And then we install the 20.4.1. So I mean, you can kind of see that there's a little bit for as far as what we do are pre and posts, and then you see an increasement. So 20.4.1 was pretty good. So when you compare this score to the very end score, you can see actually improvements with Windows running in tandem. But how we got there for as far as our mid patch and a security driver, that is where the performance reduction goes. Because look at this. Right here, when we got our post and pre at the very end of our AMD patch versus our pre-patch, we saw a reduction. So the middle of the Windows circumvent, it was really bad, and that's what I did for the mid patch note to alert everyone. Now looking at what ends up for the security driver, it kind of gets a little bit of an increasement, which is very interesting that DirectX 12 and the extreme function of 4K is affected in a security driver somehow. Like, it's very strange. And then you look at right here, which are current portions, so circumvented Windows, the 20.4.1, and things are looking right as rain. So what's Firestrike gonna look like? So looking at this, it's pretty interesting. Coming from the 20.3.1, you see for as far as this introduction, well, it's kind of a bummer for as far as there. But then you look over here for as far as the way we go into the 20.4.1, and well, that's pretty good right there. That score increasement's great. But then we come to our post patch and it tanks. Security update, it tanks even farther, and then finally we have circumvent and it's kind of better. Is it the best we've had? No, it's actually really bad for DirectX 11. So unfortunately, if you're having issues with the DirectX 11 games and your Windows is up to date, I think it's on Windows, it's not on AMD. With extreme testing of 1080p in the DirectX 11 department, this is where it becomes a little bit interesting for as far as the way it comes down to. So we have, for as far as the introduction of the 20.3.1, then we have the reduction point of like, oh my gosh, what's going down, you know. And then you have the install of our pretty cool driver for as far as the 20.4.1. So I mean, just like right there, that shows you what's going down. Windows tanks these things. I mean, from post to rejuvenated, and then we go down to our, you know, mid patch note, like almost like mid this week, if not like last week, coming down to situation, and look at that, it already reduces a little bit, not a terrible amount, but enough to be notices. And then you get a slight drop because of a security driver, so you're kind of happy to see your score finally resorting back to this when they circumvent properly. Now with the final portion of 4K coming into play, let's continue down the line again with the very beginning of the introduction of the 20.3.1. So you can see right here when we're doing our post testing and then going into where we kind of go into the driver of what it could be evolving into, you can see a really great situation as we introduce what's going down. When the scores continue to flip-flop as it gets down to a nice solid update. Now when we introduce now the new solidness of our driver and what it comes down to the 20.4.1 in its introduction, and now finally kicking out of the 20.3.1 era, you can see that right after we do our pre-mid patch, and we can see a little reduction, security introduction, and it's almost looking like 20.3.1 all over again. We finally get some movement towards, but it still doesn't come back to the very high score that we got in the very beginning of this. So folks, end game. Is this a good situation? Yes. I think Windows is finally working nice with AMD, and if we get a very good solid AMD patch in the next few days, as long as it doesn't tank, we're looking at pure performance. One can only hope that maybe the flickering screen and other things will be hopefully a little bit diminishing. If you are still being afflicted by that, I appreciate all the comments that we're getting. Definitely drop a comment down below, new community members. among returning community members can definitely talk amongst themselves to see exactly what's going down for these issues for as far as this specific card, if it be the 5700 XT or the Radeon 7 combined with my 67K or 87K CPU or 2700 Ryzen series, or whatever the case is. You should and girls should definitely talk about it. It's really fun to see how that blossoms to a lot of answers and results through just utilizing this as an outlet, and that being like a community forum down below on those comments. So thank you everyone, have a very nice day. I look forward to releasing a really cool, maybe another mid-patch notes, but I'm hoping for maybe a very good solid update for the next time that I come in for my AMD family. Stay classy everyone. I'll see you guys and gals in the near future. If you're new to the network, you can always subscribe. It's absolutely free, helps me as a creator, and if you tap that notification bell down below and crack it like a Liberty Bell, you'll get all the tech related information that I drop as it comes out. I will see you guys and gals later, and who knows, if you subscribe today, maybe, just maybe, they'll make Watchmen a video game. That'd be amazing. That seriously was a great graphic novel. If you haven't watched it, you definitely should. But I'll see you guys and gals later. All right. Deuces.